open business. And the girl.
(1940), a year that began with a whimper instead of a bang. After demolishing Poland with blitzkrieg tactics, the German army became suspiciously quiet. The entire world knew that France and Great Britain would be Hitler's next targets, but exactly where would he strike and when? The German General Staff took its time to make final preparations for its next offensive. Meanwhile, the French army hunkered down behind its heavy fortifications known as the Maginot Line, choosing to let the war come to them. It would prove to be a fatal mistake. While the Germans prepared to attack France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, the Soviet Union was on the move. In August 1939, Stalin signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler. Germany and the Soviet Union divided Poland between them. But Stalin feared his fascist bedfellow and expanded the Soviets' influence westward. The Red Army occupied Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. The Soviets also wanted to occupy Finland, which rejected the demand. Instead, the Finns mobilized their armed forces. The Russians invaded Finland on the last day of November 1939. The fighting lasted until the middle of March. Finland suffered about 70,000 casualties. The Red Army had about 200,000 men killed and another 400,000 wounded. The Soviets paid dearly for a small victory. In April, Hitler's forces launched another blitzkrieg, overrunning Denmark in a single day and swiftly defeating Norway. In May, Belgium and Holland were beaten by the Nazi juggernaut, and a British expeditionary force was driven back and surrounded at the French coastal city of Dunkirk. Nazi Air Marshal Hermann Goering pleaded with Hitler to let him finish off the cornered British troops with a massive attack by his air force, the Luftwaffe. Hitler acquiesced and held back his ground forces and panzer tank divisions for several days to give Goering his chance. But the combination of bad weather, a determined Royal Air Force, and an incredible evacuation by sea spoiled the Luftwaffe's plans. 340,000 troops were rescued from annihilation by a miracle fleet of British ships and boats of all descriptions. From Royal Navy warships to civilian sailboats and yachts, there would be no massacre at Dunkirk. In May 1940, the German war machine struck France. Circling around the Maginot Line, infantry and armored divisions attacked from Belgium and through the Ardennes forest. The French army was quickly thrown into disarray. Italian dictator Benito Mussolini joined forces with Hitler, confident that France could not survive the German blitzkrieg. He declared war on France and England, then ordered his forces to invade southern France. By June 13th, German soldiers were marching down the avenues of Paris. The victory was so swift and decisive that it traumatized the French people. The government's leadership passed from Prime Minister Paul Reynaud to Marshal Henri Pétain, a hero from the days of World War I. He signed a peace treaty with Hitler on June 22nd, inside the same railway car that was used for the German surrender in November 1918. Great Britain now stood alone against Hitler and the Nazis.
Hitler then had to reluctantly consider the distasteful prospect of having to launch a cross-channel invasion of England, something he would rather have not done. The chief of the Air Force, Hermann Goering, persuaded him that certainly the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, would have no problem in softening up England, and perhaps through these bombing raids, a cross-channel invasion would not even be necessary. But certainly what Germany did have to do was to establish local air superiority over southeastern England as a precondition for any invasion. Hitler made that quite clear.
Knowing that an attack must surely come soon, many parents sent their children to live with relatives in the countryside or in towns and cities less likely to be targets for German bombs. Hitler planned an amphibious invasion of England called Operation Sea Lion. But first, Goering and the Luftwaffe had to carry out an intensive air campaign aimed at destroying the Royal Air Force. Operation Eagle was launched by the Luftwaffe in July 1940. It had 2,800 fighters and bombers at its disposal. The Royal Air Force could muster about 600 combat-ready fighters to defend all of Great Britain. Radar became a most valuable weapon in the weeks that lay ahead. By detecting the direction and relative strength of German airstrikes, British fighter units could be alerted in time to intercept Luftwaffe bombers before they reached their targets. Despite the valuable contribution of radar, the hard-pressed Royal Air Force was on the verge of collapse by August. That same month, Hitler decided to shift his bombing attacks from military targets to civilian ones. This shift in targeting gave the British air squadrons time to recover, but populations in London and other major cities soon began to suffer. Beginning on September 7th, 1940, German bombers attacked London for 57 straight days, bringing the reality of war home to British civilians in a nightmare of explosions, fire, and death.
To the heart of London's West End, the self-condemned criminal sends his pupils to wreck and burn department stores and shops. Indiscriminate bombing is the hallmark of the Hun. With the coming of another day, the smouldering ruins of part of London's shopping centre bear witness to the work of Germany's hooligans. Grim humour in the wax models and scattered contents of a one-time proud building litter glass-strewn Oxford Street. But wreckage is not confined alone to our buildings and homes. From out the sky hurtle the shattered remains of one of the murder machines. Caught in the withering anti-aircraft gunfire, the Raider explodes and dives to destruction. It plows through a house and buries itself amid a welter of wreckage. So give a hand to the gunners and their midnight symphony.
New Prime Minister Winston Churchill galvanized British courage with